Hello, welcome to the Jenkins Documentation Office Hours. Today is June 26th. Today, around the table, we have myself, Kevin Martins, Birajit Saikia, Chris Stern, and Meg McRoberts. If anyone else joins, we'll be sure to welcome them as always, but for now, we'll go through the agenda and take things from there. So starting off the agenda, we have the contributor spotlight. So the latest spotlight we've published is from Elon Rabinovich, and Scale by Association. So that was for June. And so our next spotlight will feature Meg. I've opened up a PR and hopefully we can get that published sooner than later, but no harm, no foul. Thanks for already checking it out, Chris. Appreciate that. And then we've reached out to a couple other people, but we haven't heard back from anyone yet. So right now we don't have another spotlight lined up at this point in time, but Alyssa and I have been chatting and trying to figure out what's next. And Mark was planning on talking with some folks at CDCon this week. So there are some other potential spotlights from that would be a result of that.
May I make some suggestions regarding how I get with the spotlight? I think like some mentors from G-Talk, they may want to be featured as well. Like I think this year we could try Barriento because he's quite active this year. So and let me think. So we could try V. Also Weber.
Mm-hmm.
The two people. So V is just V is like I don't know. Yeah, V is just short. It's just a single character V and then V above. The two people, similar names.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and it's spelled with A. The V is just V, no I.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was, I just how I refer to her.
Yeah, no, of course. And then we already have featured Valentine. So
Yep,
uh,
we're gonna feature the Valentine. We featured with Jove, and I think that was also I don't think so. Yeah. Okay.
maybe that's something we can check in with about the next office hours too,
Yeah, sure.
and just see because I feel like that's when a lot of the mentors show up or are in the same place at the same time. So we could definitely check in then. Maybe there's another place we could check as well, but yeah, I think I like that idea a lot, and I think that's a good call out, Chris. So um, yeah, and that would set us up pretty well for a little bit. And even if we only have 3 or 4 people, that's, 3 or 4 more than we would have had, and that gets us, into the fall at that point, which would be great. So,
Oh, hang on. And Philip. I
oh
forgot.
yeah, true.
Yeah, Philip Guns.
Mhm.
Yeah. Guns.
What is it?
Guns.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, no, that's a great idea. I like that a lot. Thank you very much for suggesting that. I'll check in. Yeah, I'll follow up with Alyssa and see what she thinks. But I think that's a good idea, and I think that featuring the mentors is a really good way to um, highlight them and Google Summer of Code at the same time. And then once Google Summer of Code's over, we can look towards maybe the contributors and their experiences. They're going to be writing blog posts already, so um, don't want to overload them with too much stuff. But if that's something that they're interested in, it wouldn't be a bad idea to highlight them as well, like that. So
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah.
cool. All right, thank you very much. So next up is the Java 25 documentation. Nothing as of yet. Java 25 is not part of Jenkins releases or builds yet. So that will be coming later on in the late summer, early fall. I want to say that'll start to work towards that. But Chris has created an issue to track this. We've got the Java 21 updates that have shown us where we need to add documentation and update documentation. So things are going to be good there, and we'll take care of it when it comes up. The 2025 Jenkins Community Awards. So these awards, the winners were announced this week at CDCon, and the CD Foundation's published a blog post, and then Alyssa also wrote a blog post for the Jenkins blog. So we've got that. The carousel's been updated to reflect that as well. So we've got our award winners. So shouts out to Jan Faracek, Daniel Beck, and Stefan Speaker for being the winners this year. Great representation from the project, from the community, and people that are really pushing for the best of the project, which is great to have. And that's what we want to highlight there. And just thanks to everyone for voting, for making their voices heard, and being part of the community. Alyssa will be posting more about that online on our socials, so keep an eye out for further items there. But the gist of it is they're the winners there for the awards. CDF also has their own awards, so you can check them out on the CDF blog to see who else won and what of the projects were represented. But just a great showing overall, and really nice to see those names up there. This was just a continuation from the last time that we had the Androids and Jenkins blog post that Bruno wrote up. So it's a really great showing for running and Jenkins on an Android device. Uncommon usage there, and just a really good, alternative to how someone might normally run Jenkins. It's an like I said, uncommon use case, so it's not like it's going to apply to everyone, but the possibilities are there. The versatility of Jenkins is really showed off in that sort of thing. So it's a good way to highlight the project and Jenkins itself. So Google Summer of Code 2025, we're in the coding period, well into the coding period at this point. Midterm evaluations are going to be coming up in the middle of July. So um, more to come on that. But we've got blog posts from all 5 projects and all 5 contributors, which is great. We've had them posted on the Jenkins.io blog. And last week we had um, Google Summer of Code Week, where we posted all the blog posts. Alyssa highlighted each contributor individually each day on the socials. So it was really great to be able to highlight them and share them and showcase the work that's going into all these projects. It's fantastic. There's a lot of great work going on, and it's just great to see the participation, the enthusiasm, and just the community coming together for something like this. It's really nice. Chris, any notes on Google Summer of Code or
I think so. Progress so far it's been good for all projects, so I'm not too worried about them.
great? Yeah, no, the confidence is there. Everyone's very comfortable with the projects, which is great to see, and things are moving along really nicely. For the Chinese documentation site and plugin, so there's been some movement here. Chris has been working towards this and recently adopted the Chinese doc site, um, proposing some frameworks to use like Docusaurus, and just making sure that the Chinese documentation site's up to date with Jenkins.io. So more to come on this. There still needs to be some work done here. Chris, any notes here? Anything
Yeah,
you want to share?
I I need to set a meeting with Mark first, and he's like been away, so I'm gonna wait a bit before I like approach him about it.
Okay, yeah, no worries, that's fine. Yeah, so more to come with this. It's something that we've been tracking for a little bit now, and it's good that we're finally doing something about it instead of just retiring it. There's still a non-zero number of users that are utilizing this, so we want to make sure we don't drop them out of nowhere or for no reason. For the good first issues on Jenkins, so this was something that Meg pointed out a couple sessions ago. There aren't really many good first issues at this time, so we're gonna go through and scrub through the documentation, see if there's any good first issues that we can add. Something that was mentioned was the work in progress stuff, which is a great idea, but requires knowledge to fill in that gap. So it's a little bit tougher to do that sort of stuff if there isn't that knowledge base or that knowledge already existing. So um, open to it, but we'll have to do a little bit of digging, see what we can find for some new good first issues. And with the work being done in the Google Summer of Code projects, maybe that opens up some new things later on down the line, or reveals some things that we can point to and say, hey, this would be a good first issue. There's, that opportunity as well, but more to come on that. We'll see what happens. We've had a couple of releases since our last session. So we had LTS 2.504.3 release yesterday. The changelog is available on the site. There was just one entry for Windstone Jetty backport. There wasn't a whole lot going on there this time around. That's okay. And then weeklies 2.515 and 2.516 were released in the last couple of weeks. Everything looks good there. And then Mark started the discussion in developer mailing list around the next LTS baseline. Right now, it's looking like it's been suggested as 2.516, and Mark has also offered to be able to release a lead for the next LTS. So we're looking forward to that. The next LTS is going to be the baseline jump, of course, like I said, but also it's going to introduce some updated UI. The header of Jenkins has been redesigned. So there's going to be a lot of changes that we want to make sure are documented and that are captured in both the changelog and the upgrade guide so that users are aware of what's happening, where to go for certain things, where things are, et cetera, et cetera. So there'll be a good amount of stuff surrounding that, and we'll make sure it gets documented and available for everyone. For recent work done, so there's been a handful of things done in the last couple weeks. So Damien DePortel updated the mirror maintainers for mirrors documentation with some additional information, and then also found that so before it was stories.jenkins.io, it was jenkinsistheway.io. That domain is no longer under our control. So Damien went through and updated a bunch of the links to jenkinsistheway.io to the now appropriate stories.jenkins.io. So thanks to Damien for that. Mark removed a reference to the Friend of Jenkins project that was part of the donating and supporting Jenkins. So that's been removed. It's not coming back. So thanks to Mark for that. And then Tim Jacomb introduced or opened up a pull request to move the browser support policy for Firefox ESR. So basically, the story behind this is that Firefox ESR, which is a not commonly used browser, and not widely used browser, is a little bit older. It's the current version is nearly 2 years old, as he stated here, and has an issue with how colors are handled. But we're not going to go back to the old way of handling colors just to resolve this. And so what Tim suggested was moving the Firefox ESR release to tier 2 support. Sorry. And so all that means is that we're still supporting it. There's no difference there. But level 2 means that we'll do our best effort to do that. And it's not going to be as highly incredibly supported, as intensely supported, but it is supported. But yeah, and this sparked discussion around what kind of browser support we're offering. And it was a good discussion to have and helped kind of move things along in a very positive way. So thanks to Tim for that. And Tim also made sure to update this here. You can see the post here. And thanks to Birgit for updating some YAML file formatting. So that's great to see there. And then also added a share functionality to the Jenkins blog post, which is great. And this is twofold because not only is there a share button here, but it also is accessible for Mastodon and Blue Sky. So we've added those social accounts as well. So now anyone can post pretty much anywhere that they're interested in. And yeah, just thanks for that work, Brigitte. Really appreciate that. And as discussed, we're gonna work towards incorporating those the Mastodon and Blue Sky links here as well, since we're now on those platforms. So thanks very much for all that work and the continued work on the Docs project for Google Summer Code. The Google Season of Docs program is closed. This is something we've been discussing the last couple of weeks. Probably will drop it after this week. But essentially, Google Season of Docs program's ended. That's been closed up and announced in a Google group originally and on their actual site now. But it's done. The pages mentioning it have been updated to indicate the conclusion, and non-working links have been removed from those pages just to make sure that we're not holding on to anything we don't need there. And then the next thing here, so with the July LTS, it's going to be the baseline bump, but it's also going to be introducing the header redesign that Jan and Tim have been working on. So the updated header is very different from what it looks like now in terms of where things are located. The left navigation has changed as well. So there's going to be a lot of awareness we need to create for everyone. So having a blog post published by Jan about what that header redesign involved and what it looks like and what to expect. Mark and Darren will do their usual What's New broadcast after the LTS release. We're going to have an upgrade guide entry reflecting the new header update. And then I've been working on a tracking sheet to find all the different screenshots that need an update based on the header redesign. So I'm working on this right now. There are still some changes that are being worked on in terms of stuff like the icons and certain functionality and where things are in the header. So we haven't updated any screenshots just yet, but I'm trying to make sure that we cover all our bases and have everything in line so that when it comes time to update those, it's not a huge issue or problem to do so. So more to come on that, but the header redesign has been going well. Um, Upstream, it's a little bit more uh, creating some more tasks, but for Jenkins, for our purposes, it's working really well, and things are going all right there. So the wiki migration redirect instructions, again, this is something I've been working on with Damien. Uh, I've run into an inconsistency or an issue, I guess, where depending on the string used, it may be looking at another existing string if it uses the same words, for instance, installing Jenkins on or with, and then that second string uses is installing Jenkins on Kubernetes or with Docker or something. So I've got to do a little bit more research and some testing there, but things look okay. I'm going to follow up with Damien hopefully within the next week about that. Some other things have taken a little bit higher priority, but I'm hoping that I can get some clarification and some direction from him once I have that evidence and once I have those tests done. So more to come on that. And then once I do have that clarification, once we've got an answer, I'll be updating the instructions on creating a redirect, because right now the developer docs just say create a redirect and don't provide any further explanation as to what that means or how to do that. So this will also help us make sure that the pages from the wiki are actually redirecting. Um, if I were to go to the wiki right now, there's a chance that the page might not redirect accordingly, or what you would expect it to do might not work. So I have to, again, things I need to test it, do a bit further testing on and check in with Damien about. So next up is potentially removing the Java 11 upgrade instructions. So this was something that Birji created an issue for, but essentially Java 11 is not supported by Jenkins at this point in time. The LTSs don't support that, or the current LTS doesn't support Java 11. And so I was able to check in with Mark and discuss options with him, since we don't necessarily want to just get rid of documentation. So what we did was, instead of removing it, I've created a PR to kind of just walk through it. But the long and short of it is I've removed it from the actual navigation and chapter, so it wouldn't be visible on the platform information page and the platform information chapters. And I've also updated the platform information documentation and the Java support policy information to recommend upgrading from Java 11 to 17 or Java 17 to 21 instead of 8 to 11, so that it doesn't recommend or indicate anything that we don't want to or just don't support anymore. So I want to get Mark's review on this as well. But of course, Chris has reviewed it. Birjit saw that so as well. So it's good to see that there's consensus there. But I do want Mark to just weigh in, or at least give his approval on that before we do any merging and remove that. The documentation would still be available if someone did need it. They could search for it and find it, no problem. But it just removes the potential misleading idea that it's supported still. There are still users that are on Java 8 that would need to upgrade, but upgrading all the way from 8 to 17 might be too big of a jump for them. These are not the most common situations, of course. These are a lot more rare or more edge cases. So it's not something that we need to cater to, but it's something that I don't want to just completely remove in the event that someone does need that help. Um, there's no benefit to removing it at this point. So why bother doing that?
Dumb question. What about agents? Is there a limit to what Java versions they can use for agents?
So it's all based on the agents and the controller have to be running the same Java version if they want to
Oh,
properly.
okay.
So, but I think if I'm not mistaken, it's based on the user environment. So they have to make sure everything's aligned in that sense. Um, But, in, like, the upgrade instructions for Java 21, for instance, Darren actually goes through the instructions and, explains that, if you are gonna be running Java 21, you need to make sure everything is running Java 21, because the mismatch can cause issues with building or production. I forget what exactly it was, but, yeah, it's the same kind of recommendation as far as, Java 11 is not really supported. Making sure that plugins and agents and everything are all running the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, just curious. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem, man. Thanks for asking. Appreciate that. Yeah. Yeah. This piece right here is what I had in mind. So
Ah,
um
okay.
yeah, if you're upgrading, you have to upgrade your agents as well. Period. The mismatch is going to cause problems or errors or just cause things not to work. So yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Great question though, Meg. Thanks for bringing that up. Appreciate that.
Because they used to be separate. You used to be able to use separate ones. So
Yeah, I saw that in some of the other documentation, but I think at least with the Java 17 update, it's been recommended that everything's aligned.
yeah, yeah. It may not have ever been a good idea. We just said you could do it. So
That's also a very strong possibility.
yes.
Yeah. But yeah, Darren's recommendation was just to make sure everything's running on the same thing to make life easier for you. So,
Yeah.
and a lot of the plugins that are being actively maintained are really good about staying up to date on those sort of things. So I think it's been the preferred approach that everything's aligned. So,
Yeah. Makes sense.
yeah, cool. Um, any other thoughts, comments, concerns about the Java 11 stuff, or does that all make sense? Cool. All right.
I think it's kinda complicated because, like, some banks is using Java 8, so I'm not sure.
What's that, Chris? Sorry.
Some banks is using Java 8.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same idea as like hospitals using Windows 95.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. I have to go for another meeting, so bye for now.
Yeah, no worries, Chris. Have a good rest of your day.
You too.
Bye, Chris.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought that the banks are still using Java 8. It's funny.
Well, and what support, like the oldest LTS that's still supported? What Java support does that have?
I don't know off the top of my head, Mike. I'll be real honest with you on that. I
Yeah, but
think,
that's also an issue to remember that there might be people who, there have always been people who are slow to update. So,
yeah, and that's why I didn't want to just completely just delete the instructions because if that edge case of someone still being on 8 needing to go to 11, which there are a number of users. Like Mark showed me the data, like that's not that number isn't 0 yet.
right,
Um, so there's still reason to have it, but like Birgit raised the issue, is it good to have and make it seem like we're still supporting Java 11? Like that,
right,
yeah, like if the Jenkins LTS build that we're currently like promoting and supporting doesn't support Java 11, we don't want to mislead anyone into thinking that's the best call. Uh,
exactly.
and the adoption rate for 17 's still on the rise. Like that's not an across the board. Everyone's already on 17 either. So yeah, it makes sense to still retain those without promoting them. I guess the best way to look at it.
I agree. I think it's absolutely brilliant.
And I think if that goes through and if that is accepted and Mark's okay with what we did there, I think that could lead to some other things that we can kind of clean up the documentation around. Um, there's probably some areas in there that I can't think of off the top of my head that are a little bit older and need to be not necessarily retired, but maybe just kind of like hidden a little bit more in case that's not as widely used. But I can't think of any examples off the top of my head, so I don't think it's something to figure out right this second.
Separate manual for people who refuse to keep up with the software.
Well, and we'll have the version documentation after Google Summer of Code. I do,
Right.
of course, if everything works out and everything goes through, like the version documentation will take care of a lot of that too. So that wouldn't be something we have to even like think twice about at that point. We would just be able to say, okay, this version is supporting this Java version. So that documentation is available here if you're looking for, you know,
Right.
236.2 or whatever.
Yeah, that will be nice.
So, yeah. Cool. Then the last couple topics here. So the plugin developer documentation, still something we need to discuss and figure out what that will look like. But the idea is that there's a good amount of work in progress pages in the developer docs. There is not necessarily instructions for some other things. Antoine Niveau, who's worked at CloudBees and interacts with the project, has brought it up before in terms of wanting to be able to send people to that documentation with confidence. So we need to address that, but we also need someone with the knowledge of that topic to be able to help create that information. I don't have that information within myself, unfortunately. Otherwise, I would do it. I don't know how Puppet works in the back end or anything like that, but if we can find someone that would know that and would be able to help it, that's great. More to come on that. We'll figure it out. And then that also would include some stuff like maintaining a plugin instead of just improving or modernizing a plugin. What does it look like for active maintainers to continuously work on that and make sure that it's up to date? So there's a lot of information that needs to be added or could be added. So hopefully we get that in the near future. And then the Blue Ocean deprecation. So again, the work to remove Blue Ocean from documentation has started. It's taken a back seat due to the header change and a couple other things going on. But once we get an idea of when that deprecation happens, we'll be moving towards doing something with the documentation that either removes it or highlights the fact that it's deprecated and no longer supported, and we'll figure out what the best course of action is for that. But in the meantime, I've created a project in GitHub to track these sort of things. But again, more to come on that, and something we'll address once we have an idea of when that'll happen. And that covers everything I have for the agenda today. Looks like we're at time anyway, so that worked out well. So we'll wrap it up here. Recording will be available in 24 to 48 hours, posted on community.jenkins.io as well. And until next time, take care, stay safe, and we'll see you then.
Okay. Terrific. Thanks much.
Thank you.